devoted to their faith than typical churchgoers today, people like me. Also, too often Christians today think of cultural Christianity as a modern concept, and one more likely to occur in areas where Christianity is the majority culture. So, again, we think of the American Bible Belt. There's a reason we call it the Bible Belt. But the goal of this lecture series is to show you why both of these assumptions are wrong. This series is about cultural Christians, both old and new. But before we go any further, let's consider a definition, because this familiar term will keep coming up. So when using the term cultural Christians, I refer to individuals who self-identify as Christians, but whose outward behavior and, to the extent that we can tell, inward thoughts and motivations are largely influenced by the surrounding culture all around them, rather than by their Christian faith and the teachings of Jesus Christ. In the Bible Belt, these are often the Christians who may faithfully attend church for an hour most Sundays, but who then kind of compartmentalize their faith the rest of the week. They adopt a variety of modern American culturally normalized behaviors that are antithetical to traditional Christian theological teachings and practices in key areas of life, including attitudes to dating and sexuality, so for instance, cohabiting before marriage or accepting abortion, use of finances, so for example, gambling, or a lack of tithing or compassion for others with their finances, politics, so for example, we may think of the rise of Christian nationalism, and even church attendance, meaning the belief of those who think that once they've been saved, church attendance is optional. And so there are three related reasons why I'm so passionate about this subject and why I hope you will find it helpful in growing in your own understanding of both the early church and the church today. First, I am a professor of ancient history and have taught for over a dozen years at a state university in a predominantly evangelical region of the American South. I have heard too many of my students and fellow churchgoers over the years make comments about how much better and more devout the early Christians were than we are. In this study, I'll explain both why this view is wrong and also why holding this belief can mislead us in the present. But a second and related reason is that both the American public at large and American Christians in particular have a very limited understanding of ancient history and the world of the early church. Particularly lacking is an accurate understanding of Greco-Roman culture and how this culture shaped people's worldview. And this worldview, in turn, also shaped the sins to which these people were particularly prone. Historian Chris Shannon has described culture in a recent article as secondhand smoke. I think this is a very useful image for us to keep in mind. We breathe it in. But third, if we understand the presence and impact of cultural Christianity in the early church and understand that so many of our own sins are cultural sins, this will have an impact on everything, including our views of finances, marriage and sexuality, politics, and more. Because if so many of us too are cultural Christians, just like the cultural Christians in the early church, then trying to fix the world around us through politics or through particular policies on any given issue will never work. Rather, we need to pursue genuine conversion and sanctification. So, cultural Christianity is the faith of those who are professing Jesus with their words while living by the standards of the surrounding culture rather than the gospel. It is those culturally normalized behaviors of cultural Christians that become, in turn, what I refer to by the term cultural sins. Put simply, cultural Christians commit cultural sins whenever they bypass God's standards to engage in certain culturally conditioned and approved behaviors. These might be so common that the surrounding culture considers them utterly normal, perhaps not even deserving commentary, like the mixed-gender nude public bathing of the sacred virgins, to which Cyprian, the bishop we just mentioned a few minutes ago, objected. Or the modern American attitude towards cohabiting before marriage. And yet, the New Testament presents a countercultural view of such everyday subjects and many others. In the dissonance of the gospel teachings with those of the surrounding culture, we find culturally inspired sins. And focusing on those culturally inspired sins, in turn, allows us to consider which aspects of the surrounding Greco-Roman culture were particularly challenging.